All the way from the start, I can feel it in my heart, like all the way from the start.
Hey, what's going on out there? I'm Sean Devine. Hope you all are doing well. Today I've got a tutorial where we're going to talk about getting your low end and your bass to hit really hard. We're going to talk about optimizing your bass melodies in the production and composition stage. And we don't even have to do anything in terms of mixing. We've talked a lot about plugins and processes that can really help your 808s and your bass lines hit hard. But here, this is actually a technique that some of you may or may not be familiar with, but it's being used by a lot of your favorite producers. They are considering the relationship between notes and frequencies. Don't worry, we're not going to get too crazy with the music theory, but I do want to touch on it and get your wheels turning because this is really, really helpful in getting your bass lines to hit the way they should and the way a lot of you are hearing these popular 808s these days. So let me play back this 808 idea. It's just an 808, and we'll talk more about how to manipulate the notes in this melody to get it hitting the way it should. All right, so you're going to see up here, we've got a very useful tool in our EQs these days because we can actually see the representation of notes and frequencies. So if you click this little piano icon here in Pro Q3, up here it will show you the note value and across this piano of these different plots on our EQ. So what I've done is I've gone and I've taken all the notes. So for instance, this is a G. You can find that up here, and that's going to show us that that's right at about 49 hertz. Got that note, that's an A sharp. That is at about 58 hertz. And then this low note is at 36 hertz. So again, it's just very helpful to be able to see that representation of note and frequency values. So you heard that. Now let's just say that you were producing this track, and this is what I hear a lot of you doing. Let's just say that instead we had our root note at C, right? So that C is hitting more towards about 60 or 70, I would say. Let's type this into C. Yeah, so the C would be at about 65 hertz. So listen to the difference in how this hits. And if you're on speakers, that's ideal, or something with good bass response. A sub would be even better. So compare that to what we had before when we had our root at G. The range there is quite different. You know, now with this, we're going from, about 36 all the way up to about 70. And when we have it up at C, we're going much higher. We're in like the 60s to 80 range. And they respond on speakers very differently. So let me show you if we were to drop this down, some of you are going a little bit too low with it. So let's just say that we had this at that low D, right? So that actually sounds pretty good. I like the way the D is hitting. That is going to be right at 36. But then this over here, when we drop down, now that we're in this lower register or the key, that A sharp is like down here in the murky zone. We're starting to get below 30. And that's when things just start to turn into mud. So when that happens, you either need to think about changing your key to something, again, where all these notes are going to hit within a certain range frequency-wise, or, we could just take this and we can just octave it up, right? So if we take it up 12 semitones or an octave, it's going to be the same note, but frequency-wise, instead of being in that low murk now, let's just say we're at the A sharp again. And yeah, that takes it up to 58 hertz rather than being down in that murky zone, right? So now when you play that back, musically, note-wise, it's doing the same thing, but now we're getting that bass response that we need. So again, I'm just trying to get your wheels turning in terms of optimal notes for this type of stuff. I've said this before, I'm going to say it again. A lot of you ask about which frequencies hit the best. 40 hertz is the new 50 hertz. So you're hearing a lot more, especially the hip hop tracks, trap songs, where we've got bass lines that incorporate stuff closer to 40 hertz, even down, 38 hertz. It's about as low as I would go, in terms of just being able to audibly hear something. You can obviously use a lot of the techniques we've talked about to add some higher frequency information to that, so it will translate. But optimally speaking, in terms of, drivers that have good bass response, 40 hertz is going to fill a room a lot better to me anyway, and it feels a lot better to me than 50 hertz these days. So just keep that in mind. But once you start getting below about 35, especially 30 hertz, we start getting into that mud. So if you want an effective way to kind of just check and see how your bass lines are sitting in this fashion, just plot out each of your notes, go down here and just see which notes and plot them out on an EQ and see where you're at frequency wise. And if you've got a note like this, that's just way too low. I mean, it's hitting, down here below 20. Some of y'all probably can't even hear that. Then just octave it up and make sure that you're keeping things in that optimal range of, say 38 to 80, somewhere in there. That's where most of your sub bass is going to lie and hit well. So I've just heard a lot of you where the bass lines are either too high or you've got these notes that are just way too low. And again, this comes down to composition and production. So these are choices that I want you to start thinking about early on. When we get to the mixing stage and we get to post-production, you're going to be able to really maximize the amount of power that you get out of your 808s and your bass. And instead of trying to generate more frequency content later, I see a lot of you pulling out, different harmonic tools that are creating, more frequency information like RBass. This is a great plugin, but this is just going to emphasize a lot more of that mud sometimes. Or if you've got a higher bass line, it's not going to quite sound the same versus if you just have the note and that bass line is hitting at that note, that's the best case scenario. And then you don't have to worry about trying to generate something that's not there. All right, y'all. So I hope this is helpful in getting harder hitting bass lines. If you have any questions about the relationship between notes and frequency and how they apply to your bass, your 808s, feel free to leave a comment below. If you learned anything in the video, please like, subscribe, and consider sharing. We'll talk to you soon.